So anyway, to those of you just joining us, I wanted to welcome everybody again to Russ and Joe Developer Show. And today's edition is Debugging, Level 100. Very pleased to introduce to you Russ Festino. He's a developer evangelist with Microsoft Corporation, and Joe Healy. He's also a developer evangelist with Microsoft. We're going to go ahead and throw it to Russ right now. Russ, thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you very much. I'm dialing in here from sunny Tallahassee, Florida. I'm up here doing some developer events. Normally I reside over in Newport Richey, Florida, not too far from here, about a 4 or 5 hour drive. And I'm going to put up a poll slide in a second on where you're from, so I'm kind of typing that in. Joe, while I'm doing that, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I'll come back in.
Absolutely. My name's Joe Healy. I'm also a Florida developer evangelist. Yesterday I was in Tallahassee with Russ, and we had a great Vista Office launch event over there, and today I'm in Jacksonville, and that was about 100-something miles the other way, and then tomorrow I get to drive over to Fort Walton for a user group there, so we're definitely getting the state of Florida pretty well covered. Russ, you got that slide ready?
I do, because we wanted to kind of get a feel for the geography and also get folks used to using some of these poll slides. We try to ask a few questions at the beginning to try to get a makeup of the audience. So let's go ahead and put this in here. So the first one is, where are you from? And John, if you want to show the results on this, I'd appreciate it. So we want to try to get a feel, number one, how many people are local here to Florida, because Joe and I do a lot of local developer evangelism efforts here, so we're just curious about that. Other East Coast, and then Central and West, and then the worldwide, I guess, would be the last choice. So looks like we got about 26 people on board, and it's pretty evenly split across the U.S. We got a few in other areas of the world, and we got one person in here from Florida. So that was some good stuff. And I'd also like to mention that Joe and I are doing some user groups here tonight too. I'm doing one here in Cassie, so anybody close by, if you want to come down for that, and then you're doing one in Jacksonville, right, Joe?
Yep, doing one tonight.
All right, so in this particular session, we've got a lot of great content for you. I'd like to try to set the stage, though, right up front and indicate and let you know this is an introductory session, really geared for folks that are coming on board fairly new to the .NET development environment and using the Visual Studio IDE. So if you can go ahead and put that information in, we will greatly appreciate it. And for those that have been programming for a while, hopefully you'll still pick up a few tips and tricks along the way. And but like I said, the way I actually wrote up the description for this was those coming in maybe from other programming environments, and they're just starting to get their feet wet in Visual Studio. And if you can all reply to the vote, I'd appreciate it here. So I know we got more people than is tallying up here at the moment. It looks like we got about 5 that are under 6 months. We got 3 that are in the 1 to 2 year range, and we've got about 5 that have been more than 2 years. And but you know what? Debugging is a very interesting thing. I mean, it's really viewed. At one time, it was viewed more as an advanced topic, but I really think that's really turned around and become more of a fundamental topic, because you really have to know how to debug in order to program successfully, quickly, and really with some good quality to your application. So I'm glad you're all here in attendance. And what we're going to cover, we'll go ahead and take a look here at our agenda here for the next hour. We're going to start out talking about some web form applications, ASP.NET debugging in particular, talk a little bit about web services and debugging stored procedures, as well as form applications, and then tracing. We'll go through that as well. So debugging, again, issues equals bugs, and that's the main thing. And we all know that the sooner you find these bugs, the less it really costs you in the long run. If you take a look at some of these, bullet points here, where it's $1 during development, $100 during QA, and then you get the big amounts when it's released. And why is that? Well, you got to get more people involved to solve these bugs. If you have your product shipped out the door, then not only do you have the developer involved to try to solve the problem, but you got the QA folks, you got the testing folks, you got the support folks involved, and potentially even the architects, right, that might be involved to solve that particular problem. So you know, the bottom line here is, you know, two types of applications, those that work and those that don't. So our goal here is to get those type of apps that work. So first of all, I want to talk about some of the project modes. There's a couple of those drop-down lists in the IDE. When we get in there, we take a look at it where you can actually see if you're in debug mode or release mode. And in debug mode, basically, the code is fat and it's not optimized, and that's because it will contain all the debug symbols. So when you're doing all your development work, that's really the place you want to be when you go to deploy it. You want to go ahead and do a build under release, and that'll strip out all the debug symbols and optimize the code and make it run faster. So breakpoints, we're going to start out talking about some breakpoints and also getting into some other options on doing conditional breaks, kind of stepping through the stack trace and show you how to go about doing that and call out a bunch of other useful windows in the debugging environment. And what we have here is basically, it works for all the type of apps that are in Visual Studio. So those coming in that are very new to development in VisualStudio.net, you know, whether you're doing web services, whether you're doing, you know, web pages or Windows forms, it really all works the same way, straight across the board. And works also across languages, you know, so you'll be able to seamlessly go from one solution project into another, even if one's written in VB.net and the other one's written in C#. We're going to cover conditional break lines in the first demo. Now, conditional breaks are very, very useful. I know many times I'm writing applications and I might be in a loop that might be executing 1,000 times, and for some reason, maybe around the 700th iteration, I'm getting this really bizarre bug that's blowing up my application. So that's where setting conditional breakpoints really would come in handy. So I can do a break on, you know, the record count. You know, if it's greater than 700, then go ahead and go into a break mode, and I can step through each record individually, and perhaps I've got some maybe data corruption in my database that's causing this particular problem. And so we'll actually show you that, as well as the hit count. This keeps track of the number of times the breakpoint has been hit, and you can set hit count thresholds as well in the hit count dialog, and I'll show you, you know, where that comes up. There's also a great window here, the command window. Many folks probably have used the immediate window, especially those that are in the 2-year-plus usage of VS.NET. The command window is like that is basically everything the immediate window provides, which is where you can put in, you know, question mark and the name of the variable and get the data value. But it also allows you to put in commands to execute what you would normally be getting off of the menu system inside of Visual Studio. So there's very quick commands you can just type in real quick to get the call stack or view the threads, and we'll also show you that as well in the command window. The call stack, this is very, very useful to me. I know many times when I'm writing applications, I might be, you know, in a very highly structured app where I'm going from one module to another module to another module, and then pretty soon I'm down maybe 4 or 5 levels deep. And what you can do, sometimes you might get confused in terms of where that particular, you know, module got called from up the chain. So once you bring up the call stack window, you can easily navigate through every place that particular thread was actually called, right down to where you're executing the current line of code. Now, the autos window is another window we're going to take a look at, and this is very similar to the locals window. And in fact, I'm just going to put a quick poll slide here. I want to do another kind of a question in terms of the makeup of the audience. Have you used the locals window? All right, and I'm going to do a yes or a no on that, so get ready to answer. And let's go ahead and put that up. So if you go ahead and put that in, I'll get a feel for it. So I can describe a little bit more what that locals window is. So far we got strong feedback in on yes, you have. There's about 5 or 6 of you. Now it's evening out a little bit. So locals window, basically for those that haven't used it, is a window that allows you to show every variable's and their values, all that's in memory at one time. The autos window is kind of a streamlined version of that, and what the autos window does is it will only display the variables that are on the current line that's executing while you're in break mode, the line before and the line after. So it will vary as you step through the code, but always have immediately available to you just those variables that you're primarily concerned with. This is where you're at in that code at that time. So it's kind of a nice streamlined version of the locals window. And then modules will go ahead and give you all the modules that are currently running, including a lot of additional information in terms of the version, the order was loaded, and a lot of times, you know, the order that a particular module is loaded might be causing a problem. So maybe you want to take a look at where you're actually loading up some of these modules in your application. So that'll give you some that type of information. And then the watch window allows you to go ahead and just keep a particular variable up at any point in time during execution. So it's kind of a handy area just to have if you got one particular variable that you're interested in taking a look at. So a few other windows you have. There's a memory window, allows you to go ahead and dump out the memory addresses if you're, you know, because we all know memory does not lie. So sometimes you may want to get into that particular area. So let's go right over to demo mode now. I'm going to actually show you some of these debugging essentials first, and we'll get into some of these other options as well as we go through the day here. All right, so I've got my VPC image loaded up here. John, can you see that okay? And Joe?
Absolutely.
All right, good. So,
Basic debug web app, post-back page, right?
pardon me?
Just saying you got the basic debug web app up?
That's correct, yeah, basic debug app. So this is just a very simple sample application that I have. I'm going to step through. It's actually an ASP.NET application. You can see I'm in the code behind on ASPX. Here's the first pull down I wanted to point. You have the debug and release menu pull down that we talked about in the PowerPoint slide. So the debug again will have all the symbols in the compilation. And the thing I want to point out here is there, first of all, breakpoint and break mode, especially those that are brand new coming into Visual Studio. Basically, when the code execution hits this point, it's actually going to stop, allow you to go kind of in slow motion, actually to step through each line and then interrogate what's happening. So what I did to set a breakpoint here is I just clicked in the gray margin. There's a few other ways to do it. I can toggle on or toggle off with the F9 key. And under the debug tools, you can actually see there's another way to go ahead and toggle. In fact, a lot of your debug shortcuts are all listed here under the debug menu. So F5 to start debugging. If you want to start without debugging, a lot of times that's useful if you're doing UI development, for example, on a web page. You've got the ability to go ahead and toggle breakpoint step over and delete or disable breakpoints as well. So a lot of different options there. So I've got the breakpoint set, and what I'll do here is just go ahead and also point out, I'll right mouse click here up on the toolbar up on top, and always, you know, have the debug location set. Those are good sub-menus to have that you actually see being displayed here up in our area up here on top in the toolbar. Okay, so let's go ahead and fire this up. So we'll go ahead and start our application, and what we're going to do is hit our first breakpoint on the page load event for this particular page. This is the solution I might point out here is a couple different projects I have in my Solution Explorer. I've got a web-based solution up on top, and then we're going to be actually calling some components down below. Now the web pages are the code behind is written in VB. Some of the data access components that this will be accessing to derive data and bring it up to the web page are written in C#. And so if you can take a look here on the right, you can actually kind of see the structure a little bit of the solution here. So there you see up on top I've got my web stuff. And I've got another project down here below that's in C# where I've got a couple components that I'm going to be utilizing as part of this application. So this is, go ahead and chug along. It's actually doing the build right now as well as getting ready to fire up my first page. I did set my startup page here as the order page, but even that nowadays is not a requirement. If you wanted to start as a set as your start page, you just go ahead and click on it and hit the run key, and that'll go ahead and do the same thing. So it'll assume that that's your start page now. That was a new feature, I think, in Visual Studio 2005. So it looks like we're going to be hitting our breakpoint here now, and when this comes up, you'll start seeing some values appear down in our auto windows down below. And I'm just going to hover over the top of this text order, text property, and you can see the hard-coded value that's coming in here is 10248. Another thing I'd like to point out are these new visualizers that are in Visual Studio 2005. Here we see the default is a text visualizer. You also have a XML visualizer and HTML visualizer. If I click on HTML, for example, it'll give me the HTML representation of that. So if I had some HTML data in a variable, it will go ahead and automatically format that for you, so you can actually see that pretty clearly in that visualizer. You can also, the entire IDE in Visual Studio is programmable, so you can actually create your own visualizers if you wanted to, and create, some really fancy ones. Maybe you're working a lot with images, for example, so maybe you would go ahead then and create an image visualizer that might be when you pull an image out of the database, it'll go ahead and render it, and you can actually see the image in there rather than a bunch of ones and zeros that they normally see like in a text view. All right, so some of that is present right there. The other thing I want to point out here is we'll go ahead and stop debugging here, and what I'm going to do is show you some of the conditional breakpoints. So let me go ahead and get out of here, and then to show you some of the conditional breakpoint logic, what you can do is right mouse click on your breakpoint, and now you can see you've got a drop-down list over here on the right. And what I'm going to do is bring up a condition, and I'm going to type a condition in here. So whenever that text field that we looked at, the text order ID, text property, whenever that is equal to 10.249, all right, remember the default came through, it was the 248, right, is where it initially comes through. So what we're going to see now is when I go to run this application, it's actually going to skip over this breakpoint because that condition has not been met yet. And that's the whole idea behind doing conditional breakpoints, is only stopping basically when you want a certain condition to come up. So now you actually see we did not hit the breakpoint this time, and up comes the application. So if I go and change this to 249, do my lookup, now we actually are hitting that particular breakpoint as we wanted to through the conditions. The other thing you can actually see is the hit count too, so you can actually see how many times this was actually hit. See, the current hit count is 1. You can specify additional criteria here. Maybe you have a web application that only after the 20th hit you're experiencing some problems. So maybe you got a memory leak or something like that associated with it. So you can kind of put adjust that parameter as well. So some nice little tips there in terms of what you can do to make it a little bit more easy to understand and hit your breakpoints when you want to. Okay, next thing we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stop the debugging here. We're going to dive into drilling down into some code here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the breakpoint on the page load, and I'm going to put it down a couple lines here, and where we're instantiating this object for the data access layer.
One question.
Yeah, sure.
Someone says, RK says, how do you configure Visual Studio 2005 to debug stored procedures on another server that's administered with Active Directory? Could you talk of configuration to get this working?
Yeah, we're going to be covering stored procedures in a little bit, so that'll actually be my next set of demos. And we'll cover that in that session.
Yeah, the particular area there was stored procedures that are running on another server that's configured with Active Directory.
Yeah, so it's getting into some remote debugging capabilities, and remind me, Joe, to talk about that in the next section on database debugging.
Okay.
All right. Anything else, Joe?
That's the only one.
Okay. So on the code pane, then, what we're going to do is hit a breakpoint here when we're instantiating this, and let's go ahead and run this. And when we get to a breakpoint, of course, those again that are brand new to the IDE, we'll go ahead and do our lookup. Now we're sitting on our breakpoint. If you use the F11 key, that'll step into the code. The F10 will go ahead and step over the code. So if you have a sub-procedure is tried and true and you've tested it, you can press F10 and skip over that line. It'll execute the sub-procedure and keep you on that current layer. And then Shift F11 if you accidentally step into a procedure and you want to just go ahead and finish executing it and step back out of it to a higher level, Shift F11 will do that. Now these all vary, of course, by your settings when you first set up Visual Studio. These are the standard Visual Studio settings that I'm talking about. If you sign up as a VB programmer or C# programmer from early releases, some of those function key values might be different, but you can always tell what the way they are, once again, by simply bringing down the debug menu. You can actually see all these all listed up here with the values that are associated with it. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm simply going to go ahead and step into this line of code here. pressing F11, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit the F10 key a couple times. And I'm now on the SQL adapter line, and I'm going to go ahead and step into this. So now I'm actually getting to a point where I'm a few levels deep. So if I go ahead and bring up the call stack window, and again, you can bring that up in a variety of different ways. You can see you've got you know, full stack, you've got debug tools under Windows. You can actually see a lot of different windows are available right here, like the locals window, the call stack, the threads, the breakpoints window you can bring up. So I actually invoked the call stack earlier, and if I just bring this up kind of in the center of the pane so you can kind of see what's going on, you can see that now I'm pretty deep in my call stack. And if I wanted to see where I came from, I just double click on that entry, and then in the light green highlighted area you can see how we called the SQL adapter line, and way out, and actually you can see the languages here too, what language it's in, right? So you notice we started out in BASIC, and then we went down deep into C# seamlessly, which is a beautiful thing. It always wasn't that way. Trust me, this was a nice feature when this first came out. And also there's the top call that we have right on the ASP page, where we're invoking that object for the order data. So nice way to navigate around, especially when you are architecting an application with many different modules. The other thing I wanted to show you here was the command window. So let me bring that up, and the command window is invoked under the View, Other Windows, and over here. Now, why this did not get put in under the other windows, under the debug pull down, I do not know, but this is where it's tucked away, is the command window. Like I mentioned, this is very similar to the immediate window for those that have done that, and I can go ahead and put in order ID, right, and get the, oh, I got to go ahead and step up one here, so let me go ahead and press 10, get back up level here. And so now I've got the order ID here, which is my variable, so I can go ahead and put a question mark in for that. And try one more time with the space. All right, so there's our value coming back with the traditional question mark. But also, you can issue various commands in this particular window. For example, you can drill down into any one of the structures, right? So I've got the structure here for the data adapter, which is null at this point. As soon as I go ahead and step over that, we'll go ahead and execute it. Now, if I go ahead and put the question mark for the data adapter object, you can see it all gets filled in over here on the right, including the SQL command that gets specified as well. But another nice thing here about this is the fact for, if I look at the call stack here, I can just type in KB, and that'll give me my call stack that I'm in here. So this is kind of a power user's kind of a window. There are several commands. If you type in alias, you will actually see all of the commands. Let me go ahead and bring this window up so you can see these a little bit. And if you go up to the top here, you'll see that P is for debug.stop bugging, right? So you can go ahead and put that command in. If you look down here toward the bottom, there's one here for the threads, a little tilde. So if I type in the tilde character, there comes all the threads that are actually executing. So this is a very useful window. But even more useful, I think, is the autos window, which you see over here at the left side. And this is, like I say, very similar for those that have used the locals window. The biggest difference is the fact that the autos window only contains information about the data on the current line, the line above it here, and the line below it, right? So those are the areas that it's focusing in on, and you'll notice that this autos windows will change as you execute code. For example, we were looking at the database object here. Here's this select command. If you come down to select command, here you can actually see the text, the command text for that select command that we've specified in this line right above here, right? So we've got that in the autos window. Another very nice window here is the modules window. Now this one here is nice in that it shows you you know, every module that was loaded. I don't know if you've ever been on a support phone call, and the person at the other end might be asking, hey, you know, what version, you know, of this particular DLL are you using? So there we've got the Coralide, you got the path and where it's actually, you can see it's coming out of the GAC. If you scroll over to the right, you have the order it was loaded, and then also the exact version number. So you can see that really a wealth of information here right in the modules window. So that it can come in handy, and I just kind of wanted to point that out as well. So those are some of the quick windows. The command window, we showed you some of the breakpoint conditions, call stack, the autos, and locals window, just kind of give you a feel for you know, working around the IDE, some of the function keys that you can use, and really enough to get you started anyway in your debugging sessions. All right, so let me go ahead and stop executing here. Joe, I'll ask you at this point if there's any other questions. We can.
Doing good, no questions.
All right, good. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the next application here, get this ready to go.
They're either asleep or you're doing a great job.
And we'll go out to the back out to the deck here. And I know we had some interest there in debugging stored procedures, and so let's talk about that a little bit. And so we went through the watch memory, and we're back down over here now for our stored procedures. All right, so in stored procedures, you basically have two methods of debugging, one of which is you can go ahead and step into the stored procedure as the application is executing. Now, the trick for this is, well, there's two of them. Number one, you got to set up the properties for the project to include SQL debugging, and I'll show you where that is. The second point is you need to set a breakpoint in your SQL Server stored procedure before you step into it. Otherwise, it'll just step right over it, and you'll never get into debug stepping into the stored procedure. Second way you can go ahead and debug stored procedures is to you know, go to the Server Explorer and go ahead and step right into the stored procedure right from the Server Explorer just by right mouse clicking and choosing the step into method. And I'll show you both of those as we're executing it. Now, the Server Explorer, you can see right here, you can actually edit stored procedures as well right from the Server Explorer. And we'll get into actually showing this. Now, the question we had about remote debugging. Basically what you got to do in remote debugging is on the remote machine, get yourself added into the debugger's user group, and then the machine debug manager, I think it's MDM, will go ahead and kick in, allow you to do cross-machine debugging as you have the appropriate rights. Now, I wouldn't do this necessarily on a production application because you're going to be slowing it down considerably by going into debug mode. And again, everything else is the same in terms of setting up the stored procedures and the breakpoints that you need to do ahead of time and setting up your project to handle that particular breakpoint. But that's what I would do for the remote debugging. I'm not sure if that answered the question or not. If not, go ahead and maybe rephrase it. We'll see if we can get you a little bit more detail. So let me go out to the demo here that I have for this. And let's show you first stepping into it from the code and how I got my project set up. So I'm going to go bring up the project properties here. And under the project properties, under the start options, there is an area where you can check for SQL Server right over here. Typically, you might have ASP.NET by default going. This was not a default, so I had to actually go in here and make that change. So now I'm able to do SQL Server debugging. The next thing we'll take a look at is I'll come down to the code, and I'm going to set a breakpoint right here on my line right before I'm going to call and fill my data, right, a couple lines before that. So when I hit this fill, that's actually going to be executing the stored procedure that I have right up here. Let me go ahead and go in full screen mode so you can see this code a little bit better. And you can see here I'm going to be just calling the stored procedure called get products. I've got two parameters, units in stock, category ID. I'm going to add those in and specify the direction on those. And there you can see I'm specifying the command type of stored procedure. Fill my data adapter object and then bind that to my grid is the logic. So it's pretty straightforward logic. The thing I want to show you, though, is over here in the Solution Explorer. So here I've got the Server Explorer opened up, and I've expanded out the stored procedures, and what I have here is a stored procedure for get product, which is the one I'm going to be calling from the code. What we can do here is bring up in the editor by double-clicking on it, and this is where I would go ahead and set my breakpoint. Now, if you don't set the breakpoint and you try to step into it, you're not going to see this at all. It's going to step right through it, and I can demonstrate that in a minute. So let's go back over to the code and bring that up. And I've got my breakpoint all set, so let's go ahead and fire this application up. And what it's going to do is bring up my app. I'm going to go ahead and select a few items from my application, hit the button to submit it, and hit this click event that we put the code in. So let's do some condiments. We'll go ahead and pick out of our drop-down list. Let's do, say, 10 units in stock. Go ahead and get the products for that. And now I'm hitting my breakpoint. So if I go ahead now and take this breakpoint and step through this into my data adapter, we'll go ahead and fill it, and then boom, I hit my stored procedure by stepping into that line of code. Now what's nice about this is I can see the parameters are in it. There's the 10 units. Here's the category that matches up with the category ID that I had entered. So you can actually have, some of the all the great debugging stuff that we've looked at before available to you right inside the stored procedure environment. So hopefully that'll be of use for many of you. I know stored procedure development a lot of times is a very common programming task that you need to do. If not doing it yourself, at least debugging it from the application. So that is the method that's used to go ahead and do it from the code. And I just wanted to show you the app as I go back into that stored procedure. Let me go ahead and stop here. And I'm going to get the stored procedure. I'm going to remove this breakpoint. Now this time if I go ahead and try to execute this, I got a little bit of a hiccup here going on. Anyway, I'm going to have to do my rod sewing imitation on that one. Picture, if you will, that when I hit that breakpoint, it would go ahead and just skip right over it into the next line here. It would not step into that particular stored procedure. So the next thing I wanted to show you here, inside of the Server Explorer, if you right mouse click on the stored procedure, first of all, you can open it up for editing, like we've seen, or you can go ahead and step into it right from the stored procedure. So this is useful if maybe you don't have your application coded up yet, but you've got the stored procedures done. So you want to go ahead and start testing the stored procedures. You can do this now very easily by just bringing up the Server Explorer, expanding down the stored procedures, say step into this guy. And when you step into him, what will happen is it will go ahead and allow you to look at all your variables, right, that you have coming in, and it'll go ahead and prompt dialog for the units in stock, category ID. You can go ahead and enter those in, and then you'll be in break mode in the application. So here is the units in stock. Let's pick 10 here. The category ID is 1. Now I hit OK, and there you are now sitting at your breakpoint. And again, you can see the variables coming in. So that's the method you would use if you just wanted a quick and dirty test, stepping into it right from the command window. The other choice is if you don't want to step into the stored procedure, you simply could execute it by right mouse clicking, and then here you would go ahead and just look at the output results that are in the window right down below. So here you can see we have executed this. We got a return of value back of 0, so you know it's successful. So if that's all you're interested in testing out is the number of, if you got like a good EOF test or return records when you thought and all that kind of stuff, you can actually get a nice quick test by doing something like that. All right, Joe, any other questions in the question queue at this point before I go back over to the deck?
Looks like you generated some interest there. There's 4 questions sitting. Jay Mestas says hi from Peru. Okay.
Who does?
Jay Mestas. So you got a Peru guy, actually.
Oh, baby.
There you go. And then it says, if I need to be in the debuggers group on the remote server, I assume I don't need to have Visual Studio 2005 on the remote machine, correct?
You need to have the framework installed on the remote machine.
Okay. So also I understand on XP with an ST2 machine, I need to open up some DCOM ports to enable remote debugging.
Now that one there, I'm not sure about. Have you done anything with that, Joe?
Nope.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that and see if I can put a blog entry on that. So the question is, opening ports for remote debugging needed or not?
Yeah. Yeah, we can. I'll go start looking into that.
All right.
And see what's going on, but I'm not 100% sure right now. And then, Cato, what are some good tracing methods?
Oh, tracing we are going to cover. So we'll cover that in depth in the next 2 demos.
Tom, I showed that one of your databases was Moss. I wanted to find out how to debug VBNet on SharePoint 2003 and wants to add some calendar information using .NET, but he hasn't seen a full example. I only go to imports.
Let me see what that says here.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Let's see.
And the final one I know, can SQL debug be used with Oracle? No, it can't using our stuff, but if you go over to the Oracle stuff, there's actually a suite of tools that can plug into the IDE for Oracle. If you go to Oracle has a .NET Developer Center. If you go to that, there's a lot of information up on that. And I'll try and pull out the URL for the Oracle .NET Developer Center while Russ is presenting.
Yeah, and I think it used to be, I can't remember if it's the case now, but you used to have to run a script in Oracle to enable debugging.
Yeah, there's a whole big center up there.
Yeah. And Tom, if you can rephrase your question, I'll go ahead and dismiss it. If you can rephrase it on the, say I want to add some calendar information using .NET in SharePoint 2003, using .NET 2003, but haven't seen any full example of what I need.
I wouldn't go down that rabbit hole because you're going to eat your time, but if we have time at the end, we can probably tap into that one.
Yeah, because that's a few releases back too in the IDE. So we'll take a look at it. All right, so we got that all set, and this one here was yes, so we'll go ahead and dismiss that one. So yes, and we'll go ahead and post that to everybody. Okay. So that's good. So let's do a checkpoint. Go ahead and do insert a little poll side here. Is this useful so far? And go ahead and put our yes and no. No. Okay, go ahead and if you answer that quick, let's see how we're standing on track. You know, it's one of those things that we're hoping that if you have been experienced at debugging, again, this is really a very, very strong fundamental nowadays to be able to do that. So it looks like we got a good, overwhelming response here, those that are actually pulling in, and so we appreciate that. 13 out of the 34 have responded on that one. So let's get into some tracing methods. We should give some money to that guy to ask about tracing methods, because this is the next topic that we are covering here today. And so on this one here, basically in the tracing methods in the code, so this is actually code you'll be writing in your application. There are various methods that you can use to do tracing. And let me go back up one slide here. So there are 2 debugging classes we're going to talk about now. The first one is the debug class, and the second one is the trace class. So both have the same members, write, flush, asserts, and we'll talk about all these when we go through the code. The debug method, however, is intended to be used really just for the development environment before you go to deploy it. Because where do all the messages end up going? They end up going to the output window, right, is where you would go. So when you deploy it, of course, you're not going to have an output window as part of your app, and you would never see those messages. That's where tracing comes in. So tracing is very, very applicable and actually a very good best practice to incorporate as part of your application, so that when you deploy it out the door, you've got some means of kind of troubleshooting when things occur unexpectedly. And so this will enable you to support staff. So if you put some good tracing logic in your application, that support staff will love you. They will buy you cases of beer and all sorts of good stuff. Okay, so again, a very good idea to go ahead and do that. So some of the main methods then we'll be talking about here is the write method. Write line, we'll go ahead and put a carriage return. Write if has some conditional parameters you can put in, and write line if, we'll go ahead and put a carriage return as well. And some examples here, you know, you can do a trace.writeLine, my name is, whatever, just put the value in. You've got the right line if here where you can see the parameter. Age is negative when you have it less than 0, so that'll go ahead and go out to the debug window in that case. In terms of WinForms, go ahead and establish, first of all, trace listeners, and these are objects that capture the tracing output. Now, both debug and trace have trace listener collections, and you can easily add or remove trace listeners from these as needed. And what we're showing you here are really raw .NET feature capabilities, right? And we'll get into some more advanced techniques in a little bit, but I just wanted to cover the basics here, kind of explain what's going on, because it's really good to get a good understanding of what's going on in the underpinnings inside the code first before I talk about some more of these newer advanced techniques that are available to you as well. And the trace listener class, for example, the default trace listener for .NET is going out to the output window. You also have the ability to direct messages out to the event log, out to text files, and it's very, very easy to do this. We'll actually show you how to do this in the code just with a handful of lines of code. In fact, here you can see we're creating an instance of our listener object, and then we do the text writer trace listener calls and write out to a file called trace.txt out on the C drive. And then to add that trace listener in, you use the add method, and to remove, go ahead and just use the remove method. Assertions are kind of neat. This will allow you to go ahead and dump out a call stack at any point in time in your code. It stops the code stone cold at that point. You get the old abort, retry, ignore buttons at the bottom of your stack message, all right? But sometimes you just want to see what the call stack is at any point in time. That's where you use an assert. And you can have conditions here as well, where you break the execution on the top example if the yours is not greater than 0. So it's kind of the opposite test that you're seeing there in the assert. That's one thing I had tough kind of getting used to. And then the second example here is where you display also a conditional condition is part of the message. So that's the second parameter you can use as part of that. Okay, so trace switches, again, allows you to go ahead and trace either at the assembly, module, or class level. And these are set up in the config file where you can flag verbose messaging, info, warnings. And each one has their own associated level. So again, this trace switch object would be used in conjunction with the trace listener. So let's just take a quick look here on this. Let's go ahead and load up another application here. Go ahead and get rid of this one we were in. And while this is loading up, let me just say one thing here. What you want to do at some point, if you haven't already, is check out the enterprise libraries. Now that is kind of beyond the scope of this particular session. And there are some excellent enterprise libraries that do what I'm about to show you, but more in the idea of a componentized system, and with a lot of additional bells and whistles. So for example, everything I'm going to show you now in the application can be done through a config file settings, and can be done dynamically. So if you want to write to trace listeners, maybe you have one initially established, maybe going out to the C drive in a text file, you can automatically add those in with the enterprise libraries to go elsewhere, to other destinations. And so there's some very good stuff there. Again, something I take a look at. But like I said up front, I really want to show you what the enterprise libraries are doing in turn underneath. And that's the code we're going to actually be looking at here. So you get a real good understanding of what the capabilities are here in .NET and really what's going on under the scenes. So I've got this simple interest calculator example. Now this is an example I know that has been around for eons. I think every version of Visual Basic has had the simple interest calculator. Well, this is the Visual Studio 2005 .NET version of that. And so just to show you how it works, we'll go ahead and put the principal amount in. We've got the interest rate, let's put in, say, 5%, and the number of years we want to do this for. Go ahead and calculate, and it comes up saying, okay, $1,000 compounded yearly at 5% for 10 years, be worth $1,600. Not too bad of an investment there. Okay. So then what we'll do is go ahead and take a look at the code. So I'm going to go down to the line in the code for the calc investment function. And this is where the line that we're actually returning that principal amount. It's the one that does that calculation that we saw from those text boxes for years, interest rate, and the principal amount. And what I'm going to do is immediately after this particular function call for our calc investment, we're going to put some code. So let me go up to where this particular guy is called. And calling it right here. And actually inside the code, we're going to go ahead and put a line here for debugging. I'll show you that here. And let's go put a debug line in here for debug dot, and we'll do the right line. We'll do a right line if. Right line, actually we'll do entering the calc investment, right? So put that in here, entering calc investment, and then we can go ahead and hit our close quote. So now at this point, if I just simply start this up, you know, we hit that calc 1,000, interest rate 5, and go ahead and do the years 5, and go ahead and do the calculate. You know, we'll go ahead and hit that line of code, and then you can actually see now that that got written down below here in my output window. Look down toward the bottom, so we can see the entering calc investment message here got written out to our default listener, which is the output window. All right, so getting a little bit more and well, let's go ahead and put in a right line if here, just to show you that. And this one here, we'll say, okay, whenever the principal is less than 0, we'll go ahead and put in, you know, prints is negative. All right, so we'll go ahead and put that in there, and that's all set. So now if I go ahead and run this app and I enter a principal amount less than 0, put a -1,000, put 5 out, 5, go to calculate, and what we'll see now is down there we've actually hit the exit code down below where we have an if statement where if it's less than 0, we should see that error message coming up down here. So why didn't we do that? Oh, that was because I entered the wrong one in here. Okay, so I'll do one more here. I'll put a debug right line. Maybe that's it too. Maybe it's off the end here. Let's see. See it. All right, so we'll go ahead and put in another line here. And put an if statement in here for this. We'll do the interest rate. All right, so if that interest rate is less than 0, we'll go ahead and put in a little thing saying interest rate is less than 0. Put that in there as well. So we'll put that message in and fire this up, and now we got the principal and the message coming in here. There's negative. And there we have it coming up in our display for the price is negative and the interest rate is negative. So everything appears to be working just fine in terms of kind of giving you an idea on how that is used. So the next thing I'm going to do is going to fast forward this a little bit.
Got a question in the queue if you want to play with it.
Sure, yeah.
Basically, there's a question from Mike about the object browser. When would you use it? And he says it doesn't seem very useful to him. You know, good dialogue there, I guess. I was just going to respond. I personally use it when I'm exploring other people's class libraries.
Yeah.
Very good to see what methods are publicly exposed, the interfaces on it, and stuff like that. So it's definitely good when you're figuring out third-party libraries. It's also good if you get some really complicated libraries of your own, and it's a good way to just drill in, open up one of those and just, take it all the way in, click on it, and then, off on the, did you click on one?
Yeah, what I did was, first of all, to bring it up, it's pretty easy. Just expand your references, double-click on the reference that you've got loaded up. So here I clicked on the system.xml, and now I'm navigating a bit. You can actually see all these methods. And the real nice thing about it, a lot of these have self-documentation, so you can see a summary here of what this particular method is doing. So if you're getting used to the base class library, this is really an excellent way to kind of get familiar with some of these functions.
There we go.
So great question. Thanks for adding that. All right, so what I'm going to do here now is in this calc investment function, I'm going to actually add some code here. Let's see what we got here. We're going to go ahead and create a trace listener now. So in the trace listener I just added in, I'm going to write out information out to the trace log. I'm going to add the trace listener in. I'm going to go ahead and just write out the count of the trace listeners and go ahead and flush and close that particular library. Let me go ahead and cut these lines out, run this application. And basically, that's all there is to it in writing out to a particular file. And the number of listeners that we're going to see here would be how many, do you think? 1 or 2? Let's find out. Let's go ahead and put the number of years in, do the calculate. Let's go ahead and go out to my directory. There should be a file out there for the trace file that we had just generated. And if we take a look here, there's the trace text. And right there, this is the last one I did. I should just delete this stuff because this was done from prior runs. But anyway, I've got the information here entering the calc investment, and number of trace listeners is 2. And that's because the default one is included as well. All right, so that is the answer to the $1,000,000 question of how many trace listeners do we have. So here, what I'm going to do is enhance this a little bit and put in some additional code to do some tracing. So let's go ahead and put some code in here to handle, those write lines that we had just done. We'll add those in here as well. And then finally, what we can see here is I'm going to actually show you a trace assert too, what that looks like. And we'll put in principal is greater than 0. Put that in as well. So we have that set. So we'll go ahead and run this. So when it hits that, and if I have a negative principal coming in with a interest rate, go ahead and calculate that. There is an example of what that assert looks like. And if you hit the control insert, that'll strip all of the text off. So if I bring up Word or Notepad, I should be able to paste that in there. That's a nice, easy way of getting in. As you can see here, I brought the assert up and I just pasted in all that code in there. So again, control, insert, and a lot of message boxes work like that. I know sometimes you do print screens and forward large bitmaps around. That's a nice little tip there as well. And there you get the abort retry. So here's the whole call stack there, an example of doing the asserts. Okay, so let's get out of that and get back then over to the deck. I just want to talk a little bit about using tracing in ASP pages. And let me go back out to the deck real quick. So here, what we'll see here is in webconfig, there is a trace item that you can set up for the entire application. So when we're doing web development, looking web.config, the trace element has several parameters, whether to enable it or not, the request limit, in other words, the number of times you come into that website where you want to do tracing. So if you had like a request limit of 10, only the first 10 hits right to that website would have tracing information put out. Page output determines whether the trace information is put at the bottom of the file or out to a separate file called trace.axd. And then you have various options for the trace mode to sort by time, category, and whether you want it local only or not. So if you are sitting on the box and your local only equals true, you would have tracing done. If you were hitting that box remotely and you had local only equals true, it would not do any kind of tracing. So that's a kind of a handy feature. Trace AXD as well as the trace information that gets generated includes request details, the cookie tree, headers, forms, on a wealth of information there. I'll actually show you this. If you want to set it up at the page level, you can do that too. You don't have to do the whole application. You can set up on a page-by-page basis. Simply put, trace equals true up at the top of your HTML page. And also have the ability to put in your code the same types of things that we saw in that WinForm application for trace.write and trace.warn, for example, to go out to that trace log. So, for example, let's go back out to the app here, and I've got a page here. Let me get rid of this sample application. Let's bring back our original basic debug web page solution. And what I'm going to do is simply put trace equals true up at the top of the page, just kind of give you a feel for this, so you can see what it looks like. And this is, again, if you've never seen this done, this is worth its weight in gold, and I know I use it a lot when I'm doing debugging work in ASP.NET development. And when you're doing it at a application level, it's even better because the trace AXD file will contain links to every event that gets published up to that server, and you can just get right down to that particular transaction or message that came up and look at all the details I'm about to show you here on this particular application. And so once this comes up, simply go up to the trace method declaration up in the page section on the HTML page and put trace equals true, and we'll be good to go. So here it comes up. Go to the order page, bring this up, what we had here, go to the source, and very simply just put trace equals true. False but true. All right. Try that again. Equals true. Okay. And now we're good to go. So now if I go ahead and run this application, and it comes up, you'll see additional information now shown in this particular page once it comes up. Here comes the page. I'm going to go full screen so you can see it real nice. And by the way, the same tracing techniques are available for web services as well. You can actually see the exact order of the events that are firing off. No more response.write, I am here, kind of things going on in your code. You can really clearly see the first and last call for each one of these events. For those of you that are getting familiar with the event sequence that actually happens behind the scenes, this is a great learning tool as well. So you can see all that trace information there. If you had trace.writes in your code, they would appear in this section here somewhere. As they execute, you will actually see them up there. Here you can see the additional information. You got the control tree. You can see the render size in bytes if you got view state turned on, what kind of an impact that has. You have session state, application state, header collection information, form collection, query strings, and server variables. So a lot of great information, basically free of charge, simply for putting that trace equals true inside of your page declaration here at the top of the page. So folks, that pretty much concludes the demos for this session. Joe, we have any additional questions before I go through some of the summary slides?
Somebody asked something about remote ASP.NET debugging. I popped the link back to them. You can chime in on that. And then there's also how to debug trace JavaScript in an ASP.NET web page.
And did you answer that?
Nope.
You're going to leave that one for me?
Yep. You got the Visual Studio up.
Yeah, there are techniques to doing that. I haven't done too much. I know you've been experimenting and using some utilities in particular for Ajax. Want to talk about a couple of those utilities?
Yeah, that's not necessarily what he's after here, because he's just after strength client-side JavaScript. But essentially, what you need to do is you need to turn on, in your IE, you need to enable debugging, and then you can set a breakpoint in your JavaScript. And as far as tracing it and doing neat things like that, basically my technique is I'll have a little div and I'll write stuff into the div, and then that's where I'll put my trace output. But there's some other routes there. You can do debug prints and things like that, but it's definitely beyond what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and it's really some basic debugging features is what's available there in doing that.
And then let's see, is there an easy way? Let's see, when watching VARs, I have a hard time finding items and grid views. Is there an easy way to drill into these, see the text and the cells? Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, I would use the visualizer, right? So hover over the visualizer, and there should be a grid view when you're looking at the grid object.
Sure there is?
Well, that's the route I would go down first anyway, put it that way. Let me see if I got it over here. And that's the app. I got to come up with a grid view first, so not quite sure on that. We'll have to get back to you on that one, unless you got something you can offer up there, Joe.
No, I typically just write code that pulls the stuff out of the cells collection in the grid if I'm looking at that, or go to the underlying data row.
If it does not automatically appear in the visualizer, you can write your own too. So that might be another alternative.
I'm looking forward to seeing you write that.
I think Jason Bears had one. He actually wrote up. I'll see if I can ping him and get the code for that and put a link to it.
All right. Next one's our XUnit testing frameworks. Any good for debugging JavaScript like JUnit? I don't have a clue. I've never used one of those. I tend to just punch it out using alert windows and little write lines. But you got any clue on that, Russ?
No. So I tell you what, though, we will hang here after we're done and answer any other questions as the queue to they go. I just want to let everybody go here at this point because we're pretty much straight up at the hour for the session, which we had said we would do. All the features that you would expect in debugging are, again, is supported by VS.NET for those coming in new to this development environment. Support for tracing and debugging. You saw me show you how to go ahead and start debugging stored procedures as well. More information, go out to our MSDN site. If you haven't been out there in a while, I would highly recommend subscribing to the MSDN Flash, which is out at the MSDN site. That's our newsletter that comes out every couple of weeks electronically with a local piece at the bottom. So those of you that have been opening it up and not scrolling all the way down, I encourage you to go down to the bottom. You can actually see all the local events. I know Joe and I author the local section at the bottom of the newsletter. And then also, there is a code camp coming up down here in Orlando. So if people are looking for an excuse to come down to Orlando, it's actually going to be on March 24th at Seminole Community College. Joe, you want to talk about this event a little bit?
Just a code camp, lots of sessions, lots of good stuff, and then there's another code camp April 14th in Mobile, Alabama as well.
So once again, that particular link for the code camp there is orlandocodecamp.com. And what I'll do is I'll leave our contact slide up here with our contact info. And John, you can take it away.
Great. Thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate the excellent presentation today. Ladies and gentlemen, a couple of things I want to talk through very quickly. And actually, I'm going to have to step off of this slide and move on to the next slide. But I will let everybody know that right now is a very good time to go to your File menu and select Print to PDF, which will give you a local copy, a PDF, multi-page PDF document containing all of the slides in the webcast today. So that will give you a reference back to this contact information here, as well as a reference to some of the URLs that I'm going to push out on this next slide. I want to remind everybody I'm going to be putting the evaluation up in just 1 minute, and also want to remind you that we're having this excellent promotion. So by filling out and submitting an evaluation, again, you are throwing your your name into the hat for a possibility to win a Microsoft Zune digital media player. So not just for the sake of the fact that the information is extremely valuable to us in terms of refining the content for the webcast that we bring to you, but also an added, possible added benefit for you. For upcoming and previously live webcasts, our entire catalog of webcasts can be located at www.microsoft.com/webcast, including if you would like to watch a streaming replay of this webcast that you've just sat through. This will be available for stream, and for you can download a WMV of this webcast, and that should be available within 24 hours at that location in the on-demand webcast area. If you have webcast content ideas, this is another good argument for doing print to PDF, because I can't pronounce that URL. But if you have webcast content ideas and would like to let us know, we have built quite a few webcasts based on ideas sent to us by customers. So if there's something you would like to see, let us know about it. And last thing I'm going to touch on before putting the evaluation out is today's webcast was presenting using Microsoft Office Live Meeting. This is a really great collaboration tool, and if you're not currently using it in your business, you can give it a try. They're offering a free 14-day trial of the software, and you can access that at www.microsoft.com/present-live. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm clicking on a slide, and this is actually a live, it's not a slide, it's a live web page which should resolve itself on your screen in a moment. This is the launch page for the evaluation. There's two links on this that are important to us in terms of getting the evaluation out. One is a registered online, and the other is all other registrants. Both of these links will open the evaluation in your live meeting interface. One of them, the first one, registered online, will open it with the first half pre-populated with information that you entered when you registered for this webcast. The other link is the one you would click if you prefer to start with a completely blank evaluation. And I did want to thank everybody in advance for taking a moment to let us know what you thought of the webcast today. Joe or Russ, I'm sorry, is there anything else we need to discuss before?
Well, we just have one more question, Joe, and the question manager regarding Orcus. You know how that works. The question was, can we have a feature of data breakpoint in C# for Orcus? You know, when a value changes, it breaks.
Well, I don't have my Orcus VPC up. It will actually be up in an hour or so. RK, email me, jhealy@microsoft.com, and I'll respond to you on that one.
All right, great. There, yeah. For everybody that's still on the line here, there is a new Orcus VPC up on the MSDN site that you can go ahead and download, and it's the March CTP build, I believe. Okay. And really do appreciate you filling out the evals. If you can really take a few minutes to do that, that's really how we get some great ideas and some feedback as to how we can make these things better down the road. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to give a special thank you to Joe Healy and Russ Facino for bringing us yet another excellent presentation today. I want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending our webcasts. We wouldn't do these if you didn't come, so we always appreciate seeing you online. For now, that will conclude the audio portion of this webcast. We do look forward to seeing everybody online again soon. Have a great day.